We're going to be talking all about fonts. My favorite fonts, some font pairings, which fonts go best with certain niches, and some font general rules. Before diving right in, I just want to quickly say not all fonts are free for commercial use, and I know a lot of people don't care, a lot of people don't realize, but some of the fonts that you see on print on demand aren't actually allowed to be used. And even though, if you get a few sales, the person who created the font may never find out, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're using a font that isn't allowed to be used commercially unless you paid for it. If that t-shirt ever blows up and gets big, which hopefully, that's the aim, you want your t-shirts to blow up and get big. If that ever happens, you could be called out and you could lose all the money that you made from that t-shirt because you stole those fonts. So make sure if you are using a font, you have the right to use that font commercially, and we're going to talk about that in this video a bit more. This way, if you get a viral, trendy design, you have nothing to worry about. Hopefully, you'll make as much money as possible and you'll own all the right to the designs and the fonts and everything you put on that t-shirt. I'm not recommending you spend an absolute fortune on fonts. In fact, there are quite a few free commercial fonts available, so you could start by using those. And if you want to put a bit of money into it, then I would recommend $50 to $100, but literally nothing crazy, nothing's going to break the bank, because at the end of the day, you want to just start getting sales. You don't want to be so focused on paying for fonts and paying for designs and paying for so many different things, when the main goal should be getting some designs up and getting some sales. Now that we've covered that, let's get into the video. So I've split the video up into 3 parts. Part 1 is a list of my favorite fonts, what they look like and where to get them. Part 2 is pairing my favorite fonts, what goes with what. And part 3 is examples of designs with those paired fonts. So starting with part 1, a list of my favorite fonts and where you can get them. Starting with font 1, which is Gotham. Now Gotham is one of the most popular fonts in the world. It's a huge font. It's brilliant, except it's very, very expensive, and I'm talking $1,500 to use this font. So what I did is I did a bit of research and I found a similar font. As you can see, the top one is Gotham, the second one is this ICIEL font, which is a lot more affordable. In fact, I think it could actually be free. So having a look at the website, you've got the Gotham font free alternatives, and there are so many here, and all the sites to these fonts will be listed in the description, so don't you worry, they're all going to be there for you. And you can see here ICIEL thin. You've got all these different fonts which are free, you can use them, and they're very similar to Gotham's main font, and this is one of my all-time favorite fonts for everything, not just t-shirts. Next font we have Bebas, I think it's Bebas New. Now this is again a brilliant font. It's got, this is the thin and the thick. It's got a whole bunch of different thicknesses, and I absolutely love this font. Again, not just for t-shirts, but for everything I do. And that font, you can see here, you can purchase all 40 fonts for £105, or you can purchase a few of them, so 14 fonts for £45, or you can just go straight for the individual styles and pick them individually. So just the thin one for $9.99, or if you just want to go for the Pro Book for $9.99. So the prices of these fonts are here, and the licensing allows you to actually sell on t-shirts, so it's really, really good. Okay, so that's Bebas New. I think it's said like that. The next font I love is the Dead Saloon. Okay, the Dead Saloon is such a cool font. I think it's brilliant for anything Western style. It really, really works on t-shirts, and it really works on YouTube thumbnails, I've noticed. So if we go to that font, we've got the Dead Saloon font that we can see here, which is £35, and you can select your license as single user, one user, and add to cart, and it's brilliant, and that will allow you to use it on t-shirts. It's actually really, really cool, and £35 for this whole font is really not that expensive. Right, I want to quickly mention before moving on, you have something called the Adobe fonts. Now if you pay for the Adobe suite, you get access to a lot of their fonts which you can actually use commercially. So you can see here I'm on Dharma Type, and it's a start in 2005 as a project to offer exclusive fonts designed by this person for designers all over the world. And you can see there are tons and tons of fonts, a really good one. You've got Bebas New, which by the way is free if you can just view family and download it if you have an Adobe subscription. So that's really cool. And you've got 3 pages of fonts, and it's just really, really, really cool. And some of these fonts are very cool. So I just wanted to quickly mention that. Right, moving on to the next font is Calvus Spurs Stamp. This is very similar to the Dead Saloon, except I thought this was super cool. It's very grunge, very West, very like, it's just very, very cool. I really liked it. And again, I use this a lot. So that font over here, so you could download that font for free for personal use. So you could download this font just to get ideas, just to practice, just to kind of see if designs are cool, send those designs out to family and friends, see if they're good. And if people are showing that they like those designs, you can then list those designs on Redbubble, Merch by Amazon, or any platform you want, but you'd have to buy it. And again, it's not exactly very expensive. It's $1.90 for this font, which is the most affordable font in this entire video. And Creative Fabrica actually have a lot of cool fonts, and you can also just pay for a subscription and download as many fonts as you want. And over here it says including commercial license, which is really, really cool. So that is a brilliant font. I love this font. Moving on to the next font, we've got Melody Christmas. And every so often I like to use some curly fonts. I like to mix curly fonts and bold fonts. I think it just goes really well together. It's kind of like my style, and I really, really like it. So Melody Christmas is a brilliant font, and you can get that over here, which again, $1.30, which is even cheaper than Calvus. $1.30 for this font, which I just think is a bargain, considering it's a brilliant font. I just think it's so cool, and I'll show you how I use it later in designs, but I think it's a really, really nice font. The next one is Cocoa Goose. I've never really seen anyone use this font before, and I started using about I don't remember how many years, but a couple of years ago, and it was more for sales pages, it was more for thumbnails on YouTube, and then I tried it on t-shirts and it worked really well. It looked really, really nice, it looked really professional. So I've put this font in here because this has been one of my longest standing fonts, and that font is over here. You've got all the different versions of it, and it is quite an expensive font. I'm gonna say $218 for 60 styles. You've got the full family is $265, and that's for the entire Cocoa Goose family. You've got ultra compressed, compressed, condensed, narrow, text, and letterpress. And it's a really, really cool font, but again, it's expensive, so I wouldn't pay for this just yet if I were you, because you want to, you know, if you're getting a lot of sales and you want to branch out with fonts, then go for it, but it's quite an expensive font. The next one is KOMIKA. KOMIKA, I think, is a really cool font for anything superhero themed, especially if you are part of the Redbubble partner program, when you could actually make designs for some of these superhero niches. This is a brilliant font. It's really, really cool. And this one is free for commercial use, which is really, really cool. This is a totally free font, and you can use it on t-shirts and not have to worry. Very, very cool. And actually, I love this website for fonts. 1001 fonts. So many cool commercially free fonts. The next one is Tahu. Tahu is very similar to the Christmas font, Melody Christmas. It's not as joint up, it's a bit thicker, and that's the reason why, you know, I like it. I think it's a bit different. That font is also free, you know, you can use it free. This is free for personal and commercial use. So again, really, really cool. You can, if you want to be really nice, you can donate to the person who made it. You can do the entire bundle for $12, but if you just want this one, then it's free and you get all these letters with it. Okay, it's really, really cool. Numbers, symbols, everything, and I think it's a great font. The next one is Wild Ones. You can see where I'm going with this. I kind of like the curly, whirly, joint up fonts. But this is a really, really cool one. It's a bit like, it's a bit jaggedy around the edges, which is why I kind of liked it. It's not perfect, which is why I liked it. And that one over here is $15. So really not expensive for a font. And again, you can use this on limited commercial projects. So that is really, really cool and not that expensive, considering that fonts could usually be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. $15 is really cheap. We then have Bernadette, which is very similar to this Melody Christmas, except it's not as bumpy. It's much more just clean. And this one is a really, really cool one. So this one is, how much is this one? This one goes for $12. Again, not that expensive. I got these a very long time ago, so I don't remember the price off by heart, which is why I'm going to these pages. But these fonts are just really, really cool. And then finally, the last font is Horbs, which is hard to say really. And if we zoom out a bit so you can see the whole thing, this is kind of like another grungy, but it's also like a wavy kind of grungy. It reminds me a bit of like a witch font, if that makes sense. And that font over here is Commercial License Agreement, allowed use. You can use this for both personal and commercial project work. This is really, really cool. So you just can't sub-license it or do anything like that, but this is a free font, which is really cool. I like the fact that of most of the fonts that I'm showing you today, most of the fonts that I like are free for commercial and personal use, which is perfect because it means you won't have to spend any extra money. And this is just a small snippet of the fonts that I use and the fonts that I like. If this video goes well and you want to see a part 2, let me know in the comments. I'll happily make a part 2. But these are the different fonts, and those are all the different places you can get them. So that's part 1 of this video. Let's move on to part 2 of this video. Part 2 of this video is pairing the fonts that I've picked with each other. Which ones go well, which ones look good together. And again, this is all opinion based. This is what I think. You might disagree. Everyone has a different opinion on art and on graphic design and what looks good. So I picked these fonts together. I asked, Lauren what she thought, and she thought they look really well together as well. But again, if you don't think they look well together, that's absolutely fine. So starting with the first font pairing, which was font 2 and font 3. So we've got one thin one, which was Bebas New, and then we've got the Dead Saloon, which was the grungy kind of cool one. I like this one a lot. I don't know how to word it, but it's a really cool font. So I think these two go really, really well together. The next one we've got is font 5 and font 2. So again, we're going with the font 2, which is Bebas New, and font 5, which was, I can't remember which one this was called, but it's the Curly Wurly font, one of the Curly Wurly fonts. And if I go over here, I can tell you font 5 is Melody Christmas. So quite a cool looking font. I think these two work really well together, especially when they're intertwined and all of that. The next one is font 9 and the thick version of font 2. So Bebas New thick and font 9. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm mixing the thick fonts and the Curly Wurly fonts. I just think mixing those two fonts go really, really nicely. So font 9 was Wild Ones and Bebas New. Really nice fonts. The next one we have is font 10 and font 4. So font 10 was Bernadette, and font 4 was Calvus Spurs Stamp. I think these two, out of all of them, these two go the best. I just think they are absolutely perfect for each other, especially when they're intertwined with each other and you've got these little flicks here on the F and the T that can go in between the O's. Absolutely perfect. And the last one is font 8 and font 6. Font 6 is Cocoa Goose, and font 8 I believe is Tahu, if I'm saying that right. Yeah, font 8 was Tahu, and I think these two fonts go really nicely, especially saying font 8 and font 6, how it fits perfectly in between the words. But other than that, I think they go really, really nicely. Now, I'm sure there are a lot more combinations I can make with these fonts, and like I said, I use a lot more fonts than just this, but these are my most popular fonts. So I would sometimes use one of these popular fonts and a less popular font to kind of mix them together to see what goes well. So those, I would say, are the font pairings for these chosen fonts. Now let's move on to part 3, which is examples of using these fonts in design. So I spent maybe an hour quickly making up some designs using these fonts. I didn't spend too much time on them, so don't judge me for their simplicity or if they're good or they're bad. Just showing you how mixing fonts can work well with each other. So starting with the first design, which was Love Is Not Cancelled. So you can see here I've paired a bold font and a semi-curly font, and I think it works really well together. It complements each other. It doesn't clash. Like sometimes colors clash. Well, sometimes fonts clash as well, and I feel like these don't clash, and it's a very, very simple design. Moving on to the next one, we've got the grungy font and we've got the curly font. So you can see how this looks really good, and I've mixed it in with a little graphic of, a controller pad, and then not only have I a controller pad, am I 95 years old? A controller. And you can see how I've copied that kind of grungy style on the inside of the controller to kind of make it match. and then I've got some red here, and I've done the red over there, so it all kind of ties together. And I personally think these two fonts go really, really nicely together. What could look cool is if this was even higher up the Valentine and it was curved around the G for gaming. And then finally, the last font pairing, well, it's not really a font pairing, I've just gone for a solid font, which is the Cocoa Goose font. And the reason why I didn't mix Cocoa Goose with anything is because I want to show you that sometimes using the same font can look really nice. And this design actually took me flipping ages because I had to fully edit this dog and that sloth. They were not together. I had to change all the colors. I had to edit this sloth onto the dog. Some people like this design, some people don't like this design. I've got mixed reviews with it. But either way, that is how I would use these different fonts for these different designs. Now, in terms of which fonts go with which niche, so originally I had the curly whirly fonts all around this, and it looked okay, but it was hard to read. And remember, one of the #1 rules I follow is you want someone to be able to walk past you and glance at your shirt and be able to read it. I found the curly whirly fonts were just a bit too distracting, and we couldn't really see what it said, especially when it was smaller like that. So that's why I went for more of a bold font. So it's very important to know when to mix fonts together. Sometimes fonts don't go with specific niches. For example, if you have a cute dog niche, maybe going with a super grungy font won't go with it, considering who's going to buy a dog t-shirt, right? Or, you know, I feel, and again, this is my opinion, but I feel that this kind of t-shirt, easily distracted by sloths and dogs, will primarily be purchased by females because that's the type of person that I think would wear this t-shirt. I don't think it's marketed for men so much. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to want to go with the curly whirly fonts, the thick bolded fonts, because I feel like that resonates better with that gender, with that niche. And I know, you know, a lot of people will be like, oh no, equality, everyone can have the same stuff. And, you know, you're right, you know, that's fair. But I do feel, as a personal opinion, that some fonts, some designs work better for certain people. And that's why I would pick certain fonts to go with certain designs. Now, to end, I want to just quickly say, fonts are important, but they're not everything. They're not as important as consistency and patience. Those are the two most important things with print on demand, as well as focusing on all the little areas that you can try and improve, like, you know, better fonts or better designs, or better colors, or multiple platforms, sharing more, posting about your designs on Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest or wherever, doing all these little things which will hopefully add up to lots of sales for you. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, there are tons more fonts which I absolutely love, but I didn't want this video to drag on for an hour. So if you like this video and you want to see a potential part 2 into more fonts that I like and more font pairings and more designs like this, then let me know in the comments down below. And finally, thank you so much. Hopefully I'll see you in tomorrow's video.